by Yahoo! So I have an interesting question that just came to me during meditation, and the question is, what if we had been in the tomb with Jesus? So what if you won a special lottery? People were signing up, we're going to the tomb with Jesus because we're going to resurrect. And so you got on that list, and so there you are, you're in the tomb with Jesus. And there's a lot of work going on in the tomb. There's a lot of work going on in the tomb. You might ponder that a little bit. What do you do in the tomb when you are working towards resurrection? I don't think you're just laying there being dead. There's a lot of work that goes on in the tomb. There's a lot of work that goes on in the dark places when we feel like we're being crucified or treated in a less than loving way. There's a lot of work that goes on in those places. So what if at some point, 3 days later, Jesus says, I'm done now. I've done all that I need to do. I've descended into hell. I've set the captives free. I'm ready to do this thing. Can you catch the door for me? Can you just roll that stone out of the way?
What do you think I've been trying to do for the last?
Do you think we would have been up to the task? Do you think if we'd been in the tomb with Jesus and Jesus said, can you just do this one last thing? Because I've been working really hard in here. Can you just catch the door for me and hold it open while I move on out of the tomb? Would we have said, I can do this, I'm on it? Or we might have said, was that in the manual? I don't know. Did you see that on the list of requirements that we would be asked to roll away the stone from the tomb? I thought there'd be angels around to help with the heavy lifting. Well, here's what I want to propose to all of us this morning. That's what we're up to in this world right now, that for many of us feel our hearts breaking. Let's be truthful. And we're being asked to roll away the stone of a consciousness that sometimes gets trapped in a place where we think there's nothing we can do about the sorrows of the world. So I just want to put that into our consciousness. Just let it drop down in. Part of the crucifixion involves you and me losing our hope. That's part of what happens in our crucifixion experiences. We lose hope. And I heard, I think I have a slide on it today. I heard Harry Belafonte a few weeks ago on the Tavis Smiley show. Do y'all tune into Tavis Smiley? None of you are late night TV viewers? Well, I just love Harry Belafonte. I think he's a class act. So he says, even in the darkest and most hopeless times, there is a hopefulness that lives in us. It's there. It's embedded. It's there. We can't get away from it. In the hopeless and most dark times, there's a hopefulness. So we're going to do a review. How many of you were here last Sunday for Palm Sunday? Okay. So Palm Sunday, we had palms. We've still got some of those palms back there. They're starting to look a little ragged. But as the story goes, when Jesus came into Jerusalem, they spread palm fronds. They didn't want his feet to touch the ground because he was the king, the Messiah. But 1 week passes and the palm fronds are all scattered and they're all saying, crucify him! I used to have a spiritual teacher who enlightened me. She said, fame and blame is all the same. That'll keep you humble. One day they love you. Oh, we won't go there. So last Sunday we worked with this question. Who would be at your communion table if Jesus showed up and said, get the table spread, invite all the people you want at the communion table, invite all the people whose feet you are going to wash? Who would be at your communion table? And we did some hard work last Sunday. We thought about the people who may have hurt or spitefully used us, wounded us in some way. Would they be at our communion table? Jesus had his betrayer at the communion table, Judas. So who would be at our communion table? And we looked at the vision of Jesus, like what was he really bringing to us? He wasn't just showing up in Jerusalem to demonstrate some miraculous act so we could talk about it for the next 2,000 years. I mean, this is my perspective. Y'all may disagree with me, but not out loud. No. So what was Jesus showing up to talk to us about, to show us, to demonstrate for us? What in the world did he want us to be left with when he was gone? Oh, look, Paula has something to say.
Well, Jesus came, as I said last week, as a way shower, to show that he was the example of who we truly are, what we can truly aspire to, and who we could be. And I think while he was finally got to the tomb, he said, and on the cross he said, "Forgive me, Father, they know not what they do." I think what he said in the tomb was, "This is going to be way harder than I thought." But actually, yeah, he came as a way shower because we are one. We can do the same things that Jesus did and more.
Have y'all ever heard that? Yeah. Okay, so here's three things that I see in the teachings of Jesus that I particularly want to pay attention to. Jesus showed up to make sure that humankind would have a record that we, are all one with this one presence, the source presence, the presence of love. The way Jesus said it, I and the Father are one. If he had the new thought vernacular that we use today, he would say, I am one with the one source present. And that's true of all of us. But I have a feeling, because I'm in the category too, I have a feeling when we wake up in the morning, we do not look in the mirror and say, you are one with the one presence. No?
I know that.
Yeah. You do. So we are one with the one presence. If we don't know this yet, then we still got some work to do. And then he said, he wanted us to know the astonishing light of our own being. That's the way Hafiz said it. The way he said it, you are the light of the world. And then he said something really profound and audacious. He said, we're made in the image and likeness of this one presence. We're made in the image and likeness of love. When we get up in the morning, is that what we see when we look in the mirror? So you can see a person needing coffee. But do we see the presence of love? So the way Jesus said it is, God is love. We are one with the one presence of love. Y'all have heard this before. So crucifixion. We got to talk about it in order to get to the resurrection. Did you think we could skip this part? So how many of us have had crucifixion experiences in our lives? Come on, y'all. We know who you are. What does crucifixion look like in this day and hour? Because we need to bring it home personally to what it means to us today. If we just keep telling the same story over and over for 2,000 years about this one man who did this thing, we're never going to apply it to our personal lives, and our human family really, really needs for us to wake up and pay attention. So what kinds of crucifixion are going on in the world right now? I promise you, we're going to bring it back up. But right now we're going to talk about what's the crucifixion events that are happening in the world right now. What? Abuses. War. Poverty, starvation. Prejudice. Hatred, bigotry. Crisis in confidence of our leaders, possibly. Greed. Everything's coming from this side. These are the enlightened ones. What does this side have to do with? What? War. What else? Crucifixion experiences. What's going on?
Broken hearts at every
Broken
level.
hearts.
Corruption.
What about child slavery, sex slaves? What about children abducted and put into sex slavery? Come on, y'all. What about the prisons that are overflowing with people who never should have been put there? We'll talk more about that. Hunger. Addiction.
Indifference.
Indifference.
Physical world.
What?
All the physical world.
So we are, let's take a deep breath. Somebody kick the air out. We've got people with icicles hanging from their noses right now. You're hot. Turn it warmer on this side, but not.
In our next.
The new building will have phones where people can have warming chairs and cooling chairs. Okay, so we have personal crucifixion. Many of us have been through what felt like personal crucifixion.
She's an ex now.
We know who is at your community. Then we have collective and cultural crucifixion, right? We're seeing it happen just in our country alone. We don't even have to look at any other countries. We have national crucifixion, global crucifixion. We don't have to look very far to find the stories. So let's just take one of the stories, because our church is going to address one of the kinds of crucifixion that's going on. Because see, here's the deal. If we keep just looking at a story from 2,000 years ago and we don't apply it to our personal lives and what's happening in the world right now, we're still not getting it. So we're doing a lot of work in the tomb right now, you and I, collectively, on this planet. You and I, everything we do, everything we think, everything we put our energy, our prayers to, is helping to transform the collective consciousness. If you don't think you have a job, you don't have eyes to see and ears to hear yet. If you don't think your life makes a difference and is pertinent to what's happening in the world, then you aren't looking close enough. So, we're going to show this film on Friday night. Somebody said to me recently, well, it sounds like you're getting political. I just want to take a deep breath on that. I don't see this as political at all. I see it as a human rights issue. And so our church is being I'm very glad to be a part of a church who will do this. And we're going to have community dialogue afterwards. Many, many people have come to me over the last 2 weeks saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to address first. I don't know where to put my time and energy. I don't know where to send my money. There's so many things that need to be done. So this is one thing that we can do as a church community to support this event. So that's Friday night, the 21st. So what does this mean? The 13th is referring to the 13th Amendment. And Carlotta gave me this book to read recently. It's not an easy book to read, meaning the topic is not easy to read about. It's not easy to read about young people, people of all ages, put into prison, given sentences that they did not deserve, and put into a privatized slavery system. So let's take a deep breath and listen to this. This is what Martin Luther King said to the churches in the 60s, talking about what is our part as a church, as churches, to step up to human rights issues. Martin Luther King said, there is a fierce urgency now. He wrote this in the 60s. Perhaps I have once again been too optimistic, he said. Is organized religion too inextricably bound to the status quo to save our nations and the world? Perhaps I must turn my faith to the inner spirit, the church within my own heart. But again, I am thankful to God that some noble souls from the ranks of organized religion have broken loose from the paralyzing chains of conformity and joined us as active partners in the struggle for freedom. They have left their secure congregations and walked the streets with us. They have gone down the highways in the South on the torturous rides for freedom. Yes, they have gone to jail with us. Some have been dismissed from their churches, have lost the support of their bishops and fellow ministers. But they have acted in the faith that right defeated is stronger than evil triumphant. I want to read that again. The right defeated, those who were killed on the freedom buses, it looked like they'd been defeated. But it says the right defeated is stronger than evil triumphant. Their witness has been the spiritual salt that has preserved the true meaning of the gospel in these troubled times. This was written again in the 1960s. They have carved a tunnel of hope through the dark mountain of disappointment. I hope the church as a whole will meet the challenge of this decisive hour. And then 50 years later, so recently in 2015, 50 years later, the clergy of Birmingham put out this statement. Too often our follow-through has been far less than our spoken commitment. Too often we have chosen to be comfortable rather than prophetic. Too often we have chosen not to see the evidence of a racism that is less overt, but still permeates our national life in corrosive ways. So, I know you all love me and will forgive me if you think this is political, but again, this is a human rights issue. You see the subtitle of the title of the book, America's Original Sin, Racism, White Privilege, and the Bridge to a New America. I challenge you to be here Friday night. I challenge you to open your heart and mind to just this one issue that needs to be transformed all over the globe, but especially in our country. We're all slaves to the greed. We're all slaves to the greed. So again, there's my man, Harry Belafonte. He talked about the need for racial healing, with the dialogue of which we have done at this church before, but we're doing it again this Friday night. There is hopefulness in the dark and hopeless places. So think about your own dark and hopeless places in your life, relationships, your jobs, your communities, right now in our country. There's another way to look at it. So, the doorway called the tomb. Got to go through the crucifixion to get to the resurrection. I want to invite us to know something this morning. That you are a part of this collective consciousness that we call Christ consciousness. As recently as last week, a very well-meaning, lovely human being in my neighborhood said to me that she's waiting for the return of Jesus. Now, let's take a deep breath. I understand that. That's the ranks I came out of. I'm a good Pentecostal for sure. I say this so much, and I feel like I'm going to keep saying it till I get it. And that we all get it. The Christ is within us. That's what we're resurrecting into the world. We are in a tomb consciousness, and we keep looping through the crucifixion consciousness. Have you noticed that? We, human beings, keep looping through crucifixion consciousness. And every now and then, one among us says, there's a resurrection ahead. You know how on your little GPSs it tells you when there's an accident ahead, there's a traffic jam ahead, and you reroute? Well, here's the deal. We haven't rerouted in our crucifixion consciousness. We just keep looping through it, over and over and over. Some among us need to climb up the stalk like the dragon. Climb up the stalk and stop being the water bug. Become a dragonfly. You gotta climb up to a higher consciousness so that the rest of us can get it. We think all there is the crucifixion experiences of being human. Some of us think all there is war and rumors of war, disease and pestilence. Some of us think that's all it is and it's just going to get worse. That's what some of us are thinking. That's not New Thought. We're in a New Thought church because there's another perspective. There's the resurrection consciousness. A doorway called the tomb. How many of you have spent ever any time in a tomb consciousness? How many of you were there yesterday? It's okay to have tomb experiences. The hitch is you gotta slap that stone out of the way and come on out of the tomb consciousness. It's okay. There's a lot of valuable work there. We're told that Jesus descended into hell and set the captives free, people, in those 3 days. What does that mean? In our consciousness, we have many old beliefs, many things that keep us sad and tired, afraid, hopeless. We need to set free the astonishing light of our own being. That's what happens in the tomb. We set free the astonishing light of our own being.
My GPS says, you have arrived.
You have arrived. So what do we have with us in the tomb experiences of our lives? What did Jesus have in the tomb that we also have in our tomb experiences? Hope?
Illumination.
Illumination.
Faith.
Faith.
Faith. So what was the other thing? Forgiveness.
Knowing.
Knowing.
Love.
Love. Some of us resist like heck going into our tomb experiences. We look like Garfield, with our feet and hands on either side of the door. Don't take me in there. And how many of us have lived through tomb experiences where we got in touch with resurrection consciousness and we couldn't have gotten to that consciousness without going through the tomb? So, there's high and holy purpose to the tomb. What did Jesus have? He had the astonishing light of his own being. That's what you and I have. Do not go into the tomb and talk yourself into this idea that you're hopeless and helpless. We have an astonishing light within us. That's what Hafiz said. I wish in your times of darkness I could show you the astonishing light of your own being. So I'm going to end with a story this morning, and I want it to be your story too. And that's a story that took place way back in the early days of the way back in my early 20s. And it was one of those tomb experiences. And sometimes when we're that young, we haven't lived long enough yet to know that we move through the tomb experiences and come out of them. We think, this is where I am now. This is where I'm going to be. So some of you have heard the love of my young life had been killed, and I went through a really dark time. And so one day I was starting to feel a little bit better, good enough to come out of my apartment into the sunshine and see other people. And I was riding my bike through the streets of Jacksonville, Florida, an area called Riverside, if you know Jacksonville. And I was riding in and out of one park after the other. And I rode into a park, and I saw this old, ancient woman. She was like the sister of Methuselah.
Was she 50?
Yeah, she was 50. Yeah, I was early 20s, she was 50. So, she had on this old leather gardening hat and these gloves, and she was like this archetypal gardener grandmother woman. And she was cutting the roses, and the roses were falling to the sidewalk. And I rode up to her, and I know this is hard to believe, I was chatting about something nonsensical, and I did remember later, she didn't say one word in the regular way. I didn't know then what I know now. They take a vow of silence in this convent. Somehow I'd gotten into the grounds of a convent. Miracles happen when you need one. So she's cutting the roses. Oh, I would love to pick up some of these roses and take them home. And they smell so good and they're so beautiful. And so she helped me gather them and put them in my bicycle basket. And I rode home with them. And some of their little heads were droopy, but they still had beautiful color and beautiful scent. And so I took them home with me. But before I rode out of there, I heard her say, not moving her lips, but I heard her say, just as you still see the beauty of these roses, God still sees the beauty of your life even though you have forgotten. And that's the message I want for us this morning. Even though we cannot right now see the beauty in so much of our global dilemmas, the one presence, the one divine source intelligence knows our astonishing light even when we forget. So I heard her say, just as you still see the beauty in these roses, God still sees the beauty of your life even though you've forgotten. And I rode on home with my bicycle basket full of roses. I put them in every vase, every jelly jar, every old mayonnaise jar. They filled my apartment for weeks with a scent that I can only describe as heavenly. It was a moment where the miraculous met my deepest wound. Please be on the lookout for the miraculous to touch your deepest wound.
Amen.
That's what happens in the tomb. That's what happens in the dark night of the soul. It's what happens in our darkest hours if we are open to it. The miraculous is there to touch our deepest wounding. Please close your eyes a moment and think on these words. God still sees the beauty of your life even when you forget. The divine one presence, the intelligence of the universe, sees the beauty of our human family, our global family, all life. The one divine presence sees the beauty, sees the remarkable light of our being, even when we forget. Out of these present current moments that we may describe as crucifixion, resurrection is already happening. The resurrection is already happening. So I invite you to take another deep breath and turn to your neighbor and say, I see the beauty of your life. Turn to somebody and say, I see the beauty of your life. Even when you forget. I see the beauty of your life even when you forget. Now I'm going to challenge you one more little way. Here's the next challenge. Think of somebody who you feel is giving you a hard time right now. Either in your personal life or in our national life as a country. Just anybody who might come to mind. If you have trouble, I will list. And think to them. Send your love over the mountain. I see the beauty of your life even though you've forgotten. I see the divine light of your being even though you have forgotten. I see the astonishing light of your being even though you have forgotten. Namaste.